Greetings to all lovers of mysticism and secrets. Siberia, a well-known place to everyone. A place where entire civilizations were created and disappeared, information about which is not so easy to find in today's times. After all, when we look at unusual things, we only see the end result. But how did people in ancient times achieve such precision and grace? Siberia undoubtedly holds many secrets, the revelation of which will allow us to look at the history of humanity in a new way. And, by the way, where did those megaliths, cooler than the Egyptian pyramids, come from over there? Let's figure it out. Siberia. In this single word, vast expanses are felt. It is an immense territory. It stretches to the east from the Ural Mountains all the way to the Arctic Ocean. It's a unique place where about 3 people inhabit a whole square kilometer. For comparison, in a typical small city, there are approximately 1,000 or even tens of thousands of people per square kilometer. And now, Siberia rightfully holds the title of the least densely populated place on Earth. But was it always like that? Today, we will delve into that very mysterious history that few have heard of. We will explore unique findings discovered there not too long ago. These enigmatic megaliths, stones the size of a modern 9-story building. Who created them, and why? We will unravel the commonly known history of Siberia. How could entire fortresses and cities have formed there? After all, it's no coincidence that this region continues to attract so many explorers to this day. And at the end of the video, we will examine ancient maps that have the potential to reveal an entirely different history. Numerous intriguing details about ancient settlements have always captured attention. Often, we only see cult structures, lacking information about who constructed them and how long ago. Siberia is no exception. Its history has not gone unnoticed by historians and archaeologists alike. As we know, the conquest of Siberia began in the 16th century, yet it is not concluded to this day. Because even now, this region holds a multitude of secrets that scientists are still unable to explain. Nowhere in the world are there megaliths equal to the Siberian ones. It was there, for the first time in history, that walls made of gigantic blocks weighing from 2,000 to 4,000 tons were discovered. What kind of structures could these be? They clearly do not resemble the work of natural forces. Rather, they seem to be the result of human hands. However, we know nothing about them. And judging by the traces that have survived to our time, these structures have already been destroyed. And indeed, the main and astonishing distinctive feature of Siberia is its unique climate. It allows artifacts to be preserved in their pristine state. The cool, dry air and the eternal permafrost can maintain objects much older than commonly known datings. However, even with these conditions, archaeologists are not rushing to unveil all the mysteries and sensational findings. Across the expanse of Siberia, from the Ural Mountains to the Primorai region, there are numerous ancient cities and their ruins. Some have already been discovered, while others are still awaiting their revelation. For example, these unique traces of a fort, essentially an entire fortress, once stood in these lands, defying access for centuries. Now it has simply merged with the earth. Where do you think this is captured? France, Germany? I think it's already clear. This is the enigmatic Siberia itself. It's Omsk Oblast. However, when you find yourself in this place, unfortunately, you will see just this scene. Not a single block, not a brick, nothing, can you imagine? So much effort was put into building this, and so much effort to thoroughly clear it all. It turns out that if it weren't for an aerial view, from the perspective of a bird's flight, all of this would have remained unknown. This is far from the only discovery in Siberia. In the Republic of Tuva, Almost on the border with Mongolia, in the remote mountains at an altitude of 130 meters, there's an unusual freshwater lake. Right on this lake, to everyone's surprise, sits an islet that is perfectly rectangular in shape. That very ancient fortress. Locals call it Porbazan. The construction dates back to around the 8th century, and this fortress occupies a whopping 4 hectares. Now that's what I call a true defensive structure. Its walls reach a height of over 10 meters, with a total thickness of about 8 meters. You won't find a similar fortress nowadays. From above, the structure resembles a labyrinth with many passages and exits. However, for me, it remains quite puzzling. Why build entire fortresses in deserted places? Moreover, ones that can boast their grandeur to the whole world. But the most significant question, for both scientists and me, is, where could those builders, those people who once lived there, have disappeared to? Although the conventional history simply answers, wild barbarians lived there who built nothing and merely roamed from one tribe to another. But when you look at things like this, the truth makes you start to wonder. By the way, the architecture of the fortress itself has been mentioned in historical treatises more than once. You just need to know where to look. This fortress is mentioned in Semyon Remezov's Drawing Book of Siberia from 1701. This book is interesting in that Siberia is depicted as a densely populated and heavily built-up territory, even up to a fortified wall, which is now famously known to us as the Great Wall of China, which, too, has its complexities. After all, its battlements are facing towards China. As it's known, for some reason tourists are usually shown only a specific section of the Great Wall. They showcase findings that won't raise too many questions. Similarly, Siberia, which for some reason is considered a non-historical land. This very label was given to it by the German historian Gerhard Friedrich Müller during his service in Russia. The court historian Müller had a direct mandate to label Siberia as a non-historical land, and he succeeded quite well in doing so. Currently, you won't find any mentions of ancient Siberian cities in Russian textbooks. When Müller stumbled upon an old map of Siberia, he quickly realized that such a discovery wouldn't be beneficial to either the Romanovs or those in power. He even organized a special expedition to visit Siberia, where he saw everything firsthand and, incidentally, collected ancient items that were later presented to Peter the Great. When Catherine II asked Müller, who had returned to St. Petersburg, about the results of the expedition and whether he could determine the origin of these items with antiquity-level quality, he responded approximately like this: "I don't know. Well, we'll say that they were all plundered." It is commonly believed that the exploration of these rich territories began with Yermak's heroic campaign. However, in ancient chronicles, there is a perception that during their travels, the Cossacks often encountered the ruins of existing cities, which had much more active connections and communication among them than is commonly understood today. And this didn't happen 500 years before the Cossacks, but much earlier. According to epic tales, the Northern Sea Route existed several thousand years ago. And caravans traveled by sea, and then upstream along Siberian rivers, living in villages and towns. Surprisingly, Siberia did have larger cities in its history. The loss of these cities is indeed tragic for history. What do we know from history? We know that when the Cossacks arrived in Siberia in the 17th century, there were no longer cities there. Only ruins remained. It's as if a whole piece of Siberian history was erased, although fragments still persist. In 1552, Ivan the Terrible himself decided to create a comprehensive map of Russian land, capturing cities and settlements as they truly were. Indeed, such a map was created not long after, but mysteriously, over time, it disappeared during the time of troubles, leaving only the names of cities and states that were once located there: Yuguri, Western Siberia, and the Urals. Lukumori, the Ob River and part of the northern seacoasts. Belagori and Belovedi, parts of the Altai Mountains. Even the local elderly inhabitants, the old Siberians, share astonishing tales that don't fit into any existing historical framework. The ancestors who first inhabited western Siberia were those who lived near Lukumori. In other words, along the coast. This is a quite specific geographical area, the basin of the Ob River and the Tom River. Although there's no sea sand here nowadays, in the territory of modern western Siberia, there used to be a vast water reservoir that we readily took for a sea. Indeed, one of the greatest mysteries, geographical enigmas of Siberia lies in the fact that the right bank of the Ob River on ancient maps created before Yermak's time is labeled as Lukumori. Since there is no sea in these parts, the question arises of how this name ended up on the western Siberian land. In this regard, noteworthy sources are medieval Western European atlases and maps. The Fromaro map from 1459 is indeed remarkable. What's astonishing is that the White Sea mentioned on the map is not located to the north, where the modern sea with similar names is situated, but to the east. There is reason to believe that this refers to Lake Baikal. After all, beyond the Urals in Siberia, there are no large bodies of water that could be named seas. And yes, according to the official version, the exploration of Siberia began only in 1581. However, I'll remind you that this map is dated to the year 1459. Unfortunately, this kind of approach, where the existence of ancient cities on Siberian territory is not outright denied but isn't particularly of interest to historians, persists to this day. If the most ancient European structures date back to a maximum of the 4th millennium BCE, then some Siberian megaliths have an age of 10,000 years or more. And compared to these megaliths, Baalbek is just a small brick. Certainly, as always, there are more questions than answers. Yet, the history of our planet is far more intriguing than the way it's often presented to us. Send this video to your loved ones so they know the truth. And don't forget to subscribe, as there are many more fascinating explorations ahead. Thank you for your attention, and see you in new videos.